This lesson, we're going to be using JavaScript to create our game board dynamically with code. We're going to need a listing of colors. So that's going to be an array that's going to contain all of the colors of the elements that we want it to create. So we've got red, and there's no particular order to this, green, and yellow. And we're also going to use these values as setting the color backgrounds as well. Adding in one more event listener. So we've got the document object, and with the window object, so that's what also contains the document object, so also built within the browser. You can add event listeners to that as well. And the event listener that we're going to listen for is when it loads. So when the window object loads, we're going to invoke the function of setup. So this will be just a named function. And let's set up that function now. So function set. And for now, console log page loaded. So we're ready to go with all of the functionality. We're ready to build out the game board. So we see that the page has loaded. So at this point, we can build up and set up the game board. So once the page is loaded, set up the game board. And starting out with a loop, we're going to build out 4 different boxes, so 4 different containers that the player can click on. Creating an element, so calling it div or whatever you want to call it. Build a function that creates elements on the fly. So we'll call it element factory. And all we're looking for is the type of element that we want to build. So we're going to build out 4 divs, setting up a function that we've got for element factory. And it's passing in the element type. So it's only needs that one parameter. And we're creating the elements on the fly using the document create element method in JavaScript. And this is where we specify the type of element that we're creating. And we're going to return back that element. So this is going to give us a more dynamic way to build out the elements, so that all we have to do is call to the function that we've just created and specify the type of element that we want to generate. And then as we build these out, we've got our main game area object. So that's represented within this variable, representing the element with the class game area. So we're adding in all of those elements that we're creating, all of those divs that we're creating within the game area. So going back into game area, we're going to use JavaScript method append child to append that element to the game area. So let's see what happens. And if we go to inspect, I'll make this a little bit bigger. We can see that within the game area, we generated 4 different divs. So the next step is to apply some content into that div. And the first thing that we want to do, and probably the most visible one, is we're going to update the style, adding a background color to that style. And we've got our array of game colors that we can use whatever the value of X is. So as we loop through the 4, and we can also update this to be game colors length as well, because this is an array. So it will be the same thing. It'll still be a value of 4. So we see that each one of these now has a background. So we've got a background of red, blue, green, and yellow. And we can't see them yet because we need to apply a class to it. And we do have that class box that we want to apply. So this will make it visible because this box has a height and a width. So we'll be able to actually see these elements that we're creating. So adding it into div, we need to add to the class list. So we've got our class list for that particular element. And we're going to use the method add. And then we just need to specify the class that we want it to add to the class list. So now when we refresh it, we have a class of box, and we've got all of the background colors in style. And you can see that when you open up your inspector, you can see each one of these elements now has been generated using JavaScript, and we're able to create all of these background colors as well as apply the class. So coming up next, I'm going to show you how you can make these interactive. So go ahead, use JavaScript, create all of these elements on the fly dynamically using JavaScript, apply the colors coming from the array where we've got the colors listed, and we're going to use these as well later on to detect the pattern that's being created. So go ahead and set this up for yourself within your own project.